Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of our Farming RPG tutorial series. So far we've basically set up a farming system that lets us plant, grow, and harvest crops. But so far we have only been able to do one type of crop, which is once it's harvested, it's gone from the ground. But there are other types of crops that are regrowable, such as the tomato. So today we'll be going through on how to make our crops regrowable, as well as to have them die. To allow for regrowable crops, we first need to add a few variables to the seed data scriptable object. A boolean to mark regrowable crops, and if it is regrowable, how many days it would take before the crop is regrown. And with that, we are able to create another type of plant. So go to Assets, Data Tool Seed, Create, Items, Seed. Call this tomato seed. The tomato seed should be this. Create the item, tomato. This is what it will yield. And then we'll add the tomato seed, the crop to yield, it will yield a tomato. Now, what's next is to set up the seedling. So go to Imported, Asset, go to Cartoon Farm Crops. See this tomato plant? This will be our seedling. And this will be our fruit. Tomato fruit. Make the rotation face upwards. And since this is a fruit, this is an item, we'll set the tag and the layer to item. We'll add the interactable object component and assign tomato to it. Rename it and save it as a prefab under the crops folder. As for the tomato seedling, remove the mesh collider and save it as a prefab. Now go back to the seed folder, tomato seed, change the seed, set the seedling game object to tomato seedling. Now because this is regrowable, it wouldn't make sense for it to directly yield the item data because there'll be one more state that it would be in. So when it is harvestable, the tomato will grow along the plant itself. So let's make a duplicate of this. Call this tomato harvestable. Make this a new prefab. And on it, add the tomato plants. So when the tomato is fully grown, it should look like this. The player also has to interact with this. So we'll add a, so we set this to item for the tags and the layers. And we'll add a mesh collider back into this harvestable object. Now remember, according to our code logic in the crop script, in the crop behavior script, the harvestable game object is determined from the crop to yield game model under the seed data. So in the case of our tomato seed, it can't yield the tomato itself. It should yield the tomato crop first. So create a new item. This tomato crop. And we'll set the game model to the harvestable tomato prefab. Now we'll so we change this to the tomato crop instead of the direct tomato itself. So now if I were to assign some tomato seeds, let's rename this seeds. The player were to plant tomato seeds and waters them. There it would sprout into tomatoes, but you won't be able to harvest them. That's because we have not set up the code on how we are going to harvest these tomatoes. So under the tomato harvestable prefab, let's create a new script. We'll call this regrowable harvest behavior. We'll add this. Since it's going to be interactable with the player, it's going to inherit from interactable object. What interactable object currently does is that when you right click on it, when you pick it up, it's going to give you the item, it's going to render it in your hand, and then it's going to destroy the object in itself. Since our plant is regrowable, instead of destroying the object, we just want to bring the state back from harvestable back to seedling so that it will continue growing again until it's harvestable again. So first we'll override, we make pickup overrideable. Override pickup. Basically do the same thing as this. But we also need to know which crop behavior this is supposed to belong to. It's supposed to change the state back. Parent crop. But how do we know which is our parent crop? That is when we set up the function. So now in crop behavior, we have to add a few things. So when we first plant it, we need to check if it is regrowable. And we'll get the regrowable harvest behavior. Since this is going to be a component of this, you just have to get component from our game object, like that. And then we initialize. So once it's planted, it's going to set the parent to this. And when it's going to be harvestable, we should not destroy the crop game object because we want it to continue growing. We have to add a condition to this. It's not regrowable. Now we just need a function to reset the plant back to its seedling state for it to grow again. So how do we do that? Create a new function, call this regrow. So in this regrow, we first have to change the state back to seedling. But if we just switched it back to seedling, it would instantly grow back to harvestable again, because the growth points would still meet the criteria to its harvestable state. So we also have to reset growth. And how do we do that? Get the regrowth part in hours. So we convert the days to regrow, the same thing as we did before. Days to hours. Reset the growth to the max growth minus hours to minutes, hours to regrow. In the particular case of our tomato, when it hits 9 days, it's gonna minus 3 days. It's 9 minus 3, so it would be set to 6. So it would take another 3 days before it hits 9 days again. That's how it's going to work. And now we just have to regrow it. Don't forget to set the regrowable harvest behavior, the item, to our tomato. So to recap, the tomato seeds yields the tomato crop, which is this, which contains a tomato harvestable game object that contains the item data for the player to harvest, which is the tomato fruit. There are two things for regrowable crops that you have to take note of. Let's test it. See, it brings forward the tomato, which I can then okay, we haven't assigned it yet. Okay, don't forget, under data, items, don't forget to set your tomato game model, tomato fruit, to the tomato, to this tomato under crops. There, grew into tomatoes, I can harvest it, keep it. And 3 days later, it bears fruit again, which I can harvest and keep. Now I can keep doing this and get as many tomatoes as I want. So there should be a way for the plant to die. Like if I just stop watering it, it just won't grow. But by right, after a few days of not watering it, it should start to die. And that brings us to our wilting system. So how do we make plants wilt? Let's create a... Let's go to our imported asset. Under cotton farm crops. Just use this model. Rename this to wilted. And for the textures, just duplicate dirt. Rename this to wilted barn. Change the albedo to reddish brown color. Remove the smoothness. It looks just like a plant that has wilted. Make this into a prefab. Just add this to the crops, prefab, and center it over the seed area. Let's lower the scale. Actually, it's kind of redundant. We don't really need a separate game object for a wilted plant. So we just delete this and redo it as part of the crop prefab. And we'll go to crop behavior. Add a new game object. And we'll set wilted to this. Add a new state, wilted. Don't forget to set wilted to inactive. And we'll make a case for switching to the wilted state. So far we've only coded for what to do when it switches its state to wilted. We haven't created a way for it to wilt. To make it wilt, we want to give the plant a health system. We need a new int, and we'll make the plant start with 48 hours. So under seedling, set it to max health when it germinates. And so every time you water it, you will give it back health. So under the grow, so every time it grows, you get back some of its health. And add a function for it to wither. Decrease the health. And how will we be calling this function? Just like how the growth will be controlled from land, the withering will also be controlled from land. So let's go to our land script. Under clock update, see we have a watered status. Set up an if statement to commence the wilting process for when there is something planted in the land and the soil is dry. We also need to make sure the crop has already germinated. So now if I were to plant, and I just left it alone for 2 days, let's see what happens. Whoops, made a mistake here. It should be land status dot when it's not watered. So when the land is dry, it should start the wilting process. As you can see, I watered one of them and they sprouted into a cabbage. The rest I did not water, so it wilted. And it became like this. So I can harvest one, I cannot harvest the others. Whereas the seeds that have not germinated yet are still fine, I can still water them. And they can germinate and continue growing. So now the question remains, how do I get rid of the wilted crops? With that, we'll need a tool. Set up a new tool to clear wilted crops. So let's create a new tool. Let's call this shovel. Let's open equipment data. And we'll add another tool type, the shovel, and set this to shovel. Let's give this to the player. And under the land, we have to create a way for the player to remove the plants. So let's go to the interact function. For the shovel to remove the crop, just destroy the game object. So now I can easily get rid of the mistakes that I make. So if I don't want any seeds here, just remove it with my shovel. And when they wilt, I can just remove them with my shovel as well. And that's it for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.